Our story begins in a swampy forest. There we see a yellow slime with an eye, more lost than an onion in a fruit salad. That's because the person or soul inside it remembers that the day before they were reading a manga, and after that they fell asleep. And apparently, that was the farewell to their previous life, because they were reborn like this. And since crying won't help, if slime even cries, the best thing to do is find a way to survive. He even tried to shout and call for someone. Again, I don't even know if slime has a voice, but on second thought it was better to stay quiet, since the swamp doesn't seem like a very friendly place. In the middle of all this, the slime started to realize that it was a slime, but putting that aside, at that moment a system window appeared, answering some questions. First, he wasn't just any slime, he was a decomposer slime, basically a trash eater you could say, and because of that he was suffering from autophagy for not having eaten anything. Of course, that made him panic, wondering where he was supposed to find food, but then he remembered that he could decompose things, and since there was nothing nearby except a tree log, he pulled the log inside himself. And for anyone wondering, according to the slime, the log tastes like a soggy biscuit. Not that I've ever eaten a log. Anyway, 15 minutes later, he finally finished eating it. He leveled up twice and gained a skill point. Oh, and he also learned that he won't gain any more levels by eating wood. Speaking of skills, he upgraded the two he had, decomposition and pulsation. Obviously, he went straight to test pulsation, since we already know what the other one does. Just by activating it, the skill leveled up from level 2 to level 3. In short, the effect of this thing, which feels like a biology class, is that he can extend his body and gather information through it. With that, he began exploring the area around his piece of wood, and the first thing he found was a mushroom. Of course, if a normal human ate that, they'd probably be in big trouble. But since he's a decomposing slime, obviously he decided to eat it. Oh, and just a quick note, this kind of slime actually exists in real life. Well, without the system, I think. I mention that because this slime can find the fastest path between 2 points, no matter how bad the road is. But anyway, he finally reached the mushroom to eat it. For some reason, a whole soap opera started playing in his head. In it, he arrived all dramatically, declaring that the two of them had finally met. Then the mushroom asked if he was a guy called Tough Bang Bang. Don't ask, just go with it. Naturally, the protagonist agreed, but the mushroom wasn't exactly beautiful. Back in reality, that mushroom was actually poisonous. So the slime aborted the mission and left a piece of his body behind. Because of that, he lost half of his maximum HP. Furious, he returned to his piece of wood, saying he'd get revenge next time. After another 15 minutes, the slime had recovered his lost health. And of course, he went right back to the mushroom. And this time the story was different. As soon as he started decomposing the mushroom, he went back to his imaginary meeting with the mushroom. But instead of staying with her, the protagonist captured her. In real terms, he successfully decomposed the mushroom and gained a new skill called poison resistance. The strange thing was that he didn't level up, but that wasn't really a problem, since the place was full of mushrooms to eat. After eating several different kinds, he reached level 5, but he wouldn't gain any more EXP from using decomposition for the next 24 hours. Since he was too lazy to keep walking around, he grabbed the rest of the mushrooms and carried them with him. That's because he remembered from a TV show that anemone crabs use poisonous mushrooms to scare away predators. Speaking of predators, our slime ended up encountering some giant bees. They didn't last long though, because a frog showed up and gave them a nice big lick. Even though the bees attacked with everything they had and outnumbered it, the frog waited for the right moment, flicked its tongue and swallowed them all. But hey, this is nature, so of course frogs also have predators. What I didn't expect was a flamingo with a snake tail, which swallowed the frog in one gulp. For a moment it looked like our little golden slime was next, but because of the mushrooms, the flamingo flew away, and honestly, just the shockwave from that creature's wings almost killed the slime. Sometime later, back at his piece of wood, the slime realized that he was at the very bottom of the food chain, which is pretty sad, considering he had leveled up 4 times and was still just a walking yellow blob. Because of that, he even started wondering what the next few days would be like. Deep down, he wished he could be back in his room, and that everything that had happened was just a dream. The next day, our protagonist woke up, still a slime, and taking damage. That scared him so much that he jumped, and even gained a skill because of it. Outside the log, he found a slug throwing acid onto the mushrooms he had collected, and eating them. Obviously, he snapped at the slug, calling it a drooling thief, especially since he was taking damage from the acid it was spitting. The slug started trembling, and our slime realized he might have been a little too harsh, so he let the slug eat one of the mushrooms. After all, both of them were weak creatures that needed food to survive. Because of that, the protagonist started wondering if this was that legendary moment when an eternal friendship begins after a fight, when two characters first meet. He even started daydreaming about the two of them surviving together, becoming adventurers, and maybe even defeating the Demon King. But after that crazy trip, probably the mushrooms effect, he tried to befriend the slug, and it didn't go well. The slug simply started eating the slime. That's when the protagonist remembered that monsters don't have feelings. There's only the weak and the strong, and in this case, the weak one was our slime. He quickly invested his points in pulsation and ran at maximum speed. Too bad, he was losing a race against a slug. The slug soon lost patience and spat a stream of acid that dealt 27 damage to the slime, splitting him in half. To avoid dying completely, the slime abandoned half of his body to distract the slug and escape. But the slug didn't care about the other half, and kept chasing our protagonist. In desperation, with nothing else to do, he grabbed a nearby mushroom and shoved it straight into the slug's mouth. The slug quickly twisted in pain from the poison and died. And for anyone wondering, that worked because the slug swallowed the mushroom raw. Before, the slug used to spit acid on the mushrooms before eating them, which neutralized the poison. Anyway, the slime immediately went to the slug's body, wondering what he would gain by decomposing it. Of course, there was also the taste issue, but since he had tried French escargot before, it couldn't be that bad, right? Yeah, it was bad. According to him, the texture felt like thick mucus, and the taste was like salt and sweat. Still, he couldn't throw it away, since it would give him a lot of EXP, so he closed his eyes and swallowed it. After some time, he finished eating everything. He leveled up, but still felt miserable because the taste was horrible. Anyway, he was now level 7, had 1 attribute point available, and all of his skills were passive, with none for attacking, which obviously made him furious. But there wasn't much he could do, since he was a decomposer slime. Besides, even if he had attack skills, he still wouldn't be able to face his predators. So it was better to leave that aside for now. Going back to his skills, he upgraded pulsation to level 4, and tested it again. That's when he realized he could move 20 centimeters per second, which translates to about 0.78 kilometers per hour. In other words, even his speed is basically that of an amoeba, literally, and so, a week later, he had already swallowed almost the entire piece of wood. Since staying in one place wouldn't make him stronger, he decided to explore the area better, especially now that after a week he had learned how to move more efficiently in this new body. With that in mind, he spread his body in all directions using pulsation, almost like a search spell, except he was using his own body to do it. Whenever he found a mushroom, he would eat it from a distance, but during this search, he ran into another slug, which once again ate a piece of his body. The slug even fired an acid shot, but this time it missed, because our little slime had become faster. Anyway, the protagonist dealt with it the same way he handled the first one, by shoving a mushroom straight down the slug's throat. After decomposing the slug and getting that horrible taste in his mouth again, another predator appeared. This time it was a centipede with blade-like legs. Naturally, that scared our golden slime, who tried attacking it using the same strategy he had used against the slug, but it didn't work very well. The centipede quickly tried to suffocate our protagonist, but that didn't work either. After all, he's a slime. Sharp attacks don't really do much to his body. In the end, the centipede basically turned into a free meal. After devouring it, he continued exploring the forest, encountering several different insects, though he still kept eating mushrooms. At this point he had reached level 13, and even unlocked an achievement. Though it wasn't exactly flattering, it was called Weak Creature. Still, a victory is a victory, right? At least it was better than at the beginning. Following that line of thought, he decided to change his diet. Instead of focusing on mushrooms, he would start eating other creatures. If he kept growing little by little like this, eventually his growth might become unstoppable, and maybe he could even conquer the world. Though honestly, I doubt a slime could conquer the world, unless it was Rimuru. Anyway, putting that aside, he eventually found a pool of water. Naturally, he thought about exploring it to grow stronger. But the moment he touched the water, his body started to explode. To summarize, red blood cells swell when placed in fresh water. And since his body was made of something like that, he would literally explode if he touched the water. So the plan to explore the aquatic world had to be postponed. But apparently, the aquatic world decided to come to him. Out of the lake suddenly appeared a giant crab. Of course, our slime immediately started drooling. If slime even has a mouth. Yes, I know, I keep saying this. The slime even tried to get the crab's attention, but the crab didn't seem to care much. Eventually, the slime gave up, saying he wouldn't waste time with it, he could just eat mushrooms instead, and he definitely wasn't going into the water after a crab. However, the moment he turned his back, the crab fired a jet of water at him. That scared him so much, he had to hide, because otherwise he might literally die just from taking a bath. The damage was huge. After all, it was a water projectile, and if he stepped out from behind the tree, he'd immediately become a target again. So it turned into a battle of patience. Not long after, the crab seemed to give up and went back into the water, but in reality, it had simply moved onto land and quickly rushed toward the slime. Clearly, the crab was determined to eat him. Faced with that situation, the protagonist climbed a tree because, well, Crabs don't climb trees, right? Well, the crab couldn't climb, but what the slime found up there was a tarantula, or at least something like one. In the end, he had to fight it anyway. As they say, the collar changed, but the dog stayed the same. Of course, the protagonist decided to face the spider. After all, he didn't want to deal with water attacks, and he was confident, since he had fought spiders before, their cutting attacks shouldn't work on him. He was immune. However, he turned out to be very wrong. One strike from the spider cut off half of his head. Apparently the spider's skill was level 8, which somehow surpassed his immunity. To make things worse, the crab below kept firing water shots non-stop. Since the situation was desperate, our slime did something equally desperate. When the crab fired another water shot, the slime ducked, and the projectile hit the spider instead. The spider lost one of its legs and became absolutely furious. It immediately shifted its focus to the crab, and a full-blown fight broke out. The spider shot webs at the crab, tangling its claw. The crab got just as angry, and when the spider tried to attack, it didn't work. The crab's shell was too tough. Since attacking head-on wasn't working, the spider used all its webbing to completely bind the crab. But the crab fought back. In desperation, it started firing water shots wildly in every direction. Somehow, in the chaos, the spider ended up dying, and one of the shots almost hit our slime too. In the end, the only survivor was the slime. Because the crab basically died from exhaustion after firing so many water blasts, the slime approached the body, wondering what he should do. After all, he couldn't pry open the crab's mouth and shove a poisonous mushroom inside. It was far too strong for that. So he tried a different strategy. He attempted to swallow a stone because apparently he had some sort of inventory system. But since his body was too small, the inventory couldn't store the stone. It was completely full of mushrooms. After throwing all the mushrooms out of his body, he finally managed to store the stone. However, he became extremely slow because the stone was heavy. Even so, he climbed the tree with it, then jumped down from above, trying to crush the crab. The crab tried to fire a water shot in response, but water against a falling stone didn't work out very well. In the end, the slime was the only survivor, and even gained a level plus free food since he barely did anything in that fight. Sometime later, the first thing he tasted was the crab, and of course it was a delicacy. After all, until now he had only been eating wood and mushrooms. He was so emotional that he almost wanted to change the genre of the story from isekai slime to gourmet isekai. But putting that aside, now that he was full, it was finally time to test some powers. He tried every possible way to release some kind of ability. After all, if a crab can shoot water, a slime should have something too, right? Though honestly, the system itself already counts as a power, but okay. Our protagonist pushed himself so hard that his body started to crumble, almost like it was turning into gas. He was forcing it way too much. Eventually, he started feeling strange and ended up vomiting a piece of his own body. And surprisingly, that turned into a new skill, acid shot. Naturally, he was thrilled. He finally had an attack ability, but first he wanted to test its limits. In short, he could fire it as many times as he wanted. The problem was that every shot cost him part of his own body, since he was literally spitting himself out. By the end of the test, he was practically reduced to dust. Basically, all of his abilities revolve around the body he has, which is a bit disappointing, because it seems like he won't be using magic. Because of that, if he wants to become strong, he'll need to make his body stronger than ever. Following that thought, he had an idea. If I can grow indefinitely, why don't I just eat my own body? With that in mind, he went to the piece of himself that had been cut off during the fight with the spider, and started eating it. And when he did that, he suddenly received a flood of memories entering his head. If slime even has a head, that is. Actually, my friends, the piece of our little slime's body that had been cut off started decomposing things on its own. Because of that, the main body ended up gaining the experience from the severed piece. And of course, that's extremely overpowered. After all, he could send pieces of his body everywhere and later just go eat them himself. It's almost like having multiple mouths. However, when he started testing this idea, it turned out it wasn't that simple. Apparently, whether it's the main body or a divided one, if the HP drops below 30, the slime enters a state of autophagy. It wasn't a huge problem though, because every time he eats something he can recover his body. For that reason, the second body he created had exactly 30 HP, and that one actually worked. At that point, he started feeling like Naruto, creating multiple clones. Anyway, he sent one clone to eat wood splinters, another to eat mushrooms, while he himself went to eat the remaining part of the spider's body. And of course, he started feeling incredibly powerful. After all, normal piercing and slashing attacks don't work on him. Of course, if it's a high-level attack, that's another story, then he can't really avoid it. Basically, you could say he's almost immune to physical attacks. The real problem would be magical attacks, if magic even existed in that world, since until now he hadn't seen anything like that. So far it just seemed like the world had some strange animals. Nothing beyond that. But putting that aside, our slime changed his strategy. This time he started using his own body as bait. He formed a line using pieces of himself, attracting several crabs. When they were all gathered together in a row, he somehow managed to knock an entire tree down on top of them, killing many at once. With that, he leveled up from level 14 to level 15. After enjoying the feast and recovering his health, he started playing gunslinger with his acid bullets. Well, not exactly playing, he was actually training. Eventually, he managed to raise the skill to level 6. From what he observed, the maximum he could fire was 30 bullets. But since he had only been shooting parts of his own body, he decided to experiment. He tried shooting pieces of mushrooms, and even small stones. And of course he felt like a genius. After all, who would imagine you could do something like that? But his experiments were suddenly interrupted when he heard a strange noise coming from a tree. Naturally, he went to check what it was. On the way there, he saw little glowing lights here and there. At first he thought they were fireflies, but in reality, it was an owl, and it was apparently using magic. That immediately scared him, because it meant that magic really does exist in this world. But actually, that owl wasn't the real threat. It turned out there was a human controlling it. The human was using a skill called animal symbiosis. Yes, this was the first time humans appeared in the story. Apparently they had already found that forest strange because no form of communication worked outside of it. That's why they were being cautious and using detection abilities. Meanwhile, our slime ran away in complete panic. When he reached the lake, he accidentally created a new ability by jumping into the water and separating part of his body to gain momentum. Of course, he lost a lot of HP, but he managed to reach the other side. After hiding behind a tree, he started wondering if everything was okay. To make sure he wouldn't die, he decided to eat some tree bark. But suddenly, he felt a terrifying presence. At first he wondered if the owl had followed him, but when he looked around more carefully, he realized it wasn't the owl at all. It was a gigantic finger. Seeing that thing made him go crazy with excitement. According to him, if he could decompose and absorb that finger, which clearly belonged to a high-level magical beast, he would instantly fill many of the gaps in his strength. The moment he started decomposing it, however, the system gave him a warning. Decomposition failed because the carcass's level was far too high. As a result, he started taking massive damage. But even so, our slime refused to give up. He split his body, went back to a log to recover some HP, and planned to repeat the process. Take damage, retreat to heal, then return to the carcass again. But apparently luck wasn't on his side. Out of nowhere, a massive earthquake began. A hole opened right where he was standing, and the ground swallowed the giant finger. Naturally, he was shocked. He couldn't even trust the ground he walked on. He became a bit depressed, realizing that the farther he explored, the more insignificant he seemed. So he decided to stay calm and continue decomposing things little by little. As for the finger that got swallowed, it apparently fell deeper underground, where an unknown monster lived. Anyway, returning to our slime, he moved a bit away from the area and created a temporary base nearby. It was also time to retrieve the other bodies he had split off earlier. He chose a tree as his base and started reorganizing its interior. And honestly, this slime is pretty picky. He even placed a glowing mushroom as a lamp, made a sofa out of a stone, and built a table using small pieces of wood. His base became surprisingly well organized. He even created a fake base to fool intruders, while the real base was hidden slightly higher up. After that, he stopped to rest for a while and continued eating the remaining spider meat, which somehow seemed endless. But the slime couldn't have peace, because apparently the neighbors were making noise. Those neighbors were the giant bees he had seen earlier. Already annoyed, he went over and killed one of them, thinking it would be easy, but he quickly realized he had made a mistake. He was alone against a swarm of giant bees. Still, he had a strategy. As soon as the bees entered his house, he simply swallowed them, since their attacks couldn't damage his body. Then he looked outside again and found their hive. The problem was that he had basically kicked a hornet's nest. An insane number of bees came after him. At first he tried to stay calm, saying their attacks were ineffective, and technically they were. But he forgot one important thing. A lot of bodies in one place generate heat, and the heat from that swarm of bees was what started damaging him. So in the end, he wasn't dying because of the bees' attacks. He was dying because of the heat. Panicking, he tried to launch himself upward, but he ran straight into a shield made of honey. Clearly, these weren't normal bees. They were organized almost like an army. There were worker bees, guard bees, and even a mage bee. Since it was obvious they weren't there to negotiate, the slime started firing acid shots in every direction, killing many of them. Of course, as we already know, that also damages him. But now, that wasn't a problem, because while he was shooting, he was absorbing life from the tree he was attached to. And the real problem now was the shielded bees, which were managing to defend themselves against the gunshots. While he was shooting, some bees tried to attack him from behind, which didn't work very well, right? Because his body didn't take physical damage. Taking advantage of that chance, he swallowed the 2 bees that tried to attack him, and because of them he gained 4 bee spears, which he quickly incorporated into his attacks, and managed to pierce the shields of those guard bees. Faced with that attack, the mage bee ordered the entire army to retreat, and then she changed her strategy. She started using magic, and not just any magic, but fire magic in the middle of a forest. Maybe a suicidal attack, who knows? And obviously every hit that landed on our little slime dealt a lot of damage. So he began to run away. As soon as he got the chance, he started absorbing a tree to recover his health. Of course, the slime wasn't going to stay only on the defensive. The problem was that as soon as he counterattacked, the guard bees gathered together and formed a double shield, and because of that, the acid attack stopped working. And not satisfied with that, to make the situation even worse, the mage bee sent some worker bees in what you could call suicide mode, literally exploding toward our slime. He even managed to dodge, but he was quickly surrounded. With not much else he could do, he accepted defeat, and was blown up again and again, and even the mage bee was pleased. However, that was only a distraction, because the main body was already heading toward the hive, and there was no longer time to do anything. To better understand what happened, we go back to before the first bee explosion. Our slime separated a piece of his body, and threw it toward the hive, waiting for the right moment. As soon as the mage bee concentrated all her firepower on the other part of his body, he quickly headed toward their nest. Once inside the hive, he used that ability to find the easiest path, and then he discovered where the honey was stored. Of course, he did want to take advantage of the honey, but he was there for something else. In this case, the queen bee. Not long after that, the other bees arrived, and our slime had already taken the queen bee hostage. Of course, he tried to negotiate, but apparently the army wasn't very interested in talking, and because of that, the slime killed the queen. That made the army quickly collapse, because the queen basically controlled everything, which was kind of disappointing, because the slime really wanted to negotiate. But in the end, it seemed that the animals there only followed their instincts. After decomposing the entire hive, our slime reached level 21, and with that, decomposition not only significantly increased his poison resistance, but he also unexpectedly gained a new skill called Central Command, which probably came from the queen bee. But at the moment it didn't make much sense to him, because he had nothing to control. Leaving that aside, he tried to increase his decomposition skill as much as possible, but the system stopped him, saying he couldn't do that. So the only thing he could do was increase his pulse, which was weaker. Another thing, now his inventory was full of honey, which basically meant he had a bunch of healing potions stored inside it. Anyway, looking at the massacre he had caused, he didn't really know how to feel, since until now, his path of survival had been nothing but killing. He felt so troubled that he even started inventing a story in his head. In it, a father crab went out to work and never came back. His family went looking for him, but what they found was no longer the father crab. In short, the slime now felt like a villain after everything he had done. Returning to reality, he realized that this was probably the influence of his human mind inside a monster's body, so he decided to ignore it. Besides, if he wasn't the hunter, he would certainly become the prey. After all, the law of nature is that the strong eat the weak. Following that line of thought, he remembered that he needed to recover the other pieces of his body that he had scattered around the world. During this search, he ended up finding a camp with a campfire, and in fact, they were the same humans who had been controlling that owl earlier. The group was composed of 3 people. A pink-haired girl named Mia Ross, a C-rank adventurer, a bearded B-rank adventurer named Rake Carter, another B-rank adventurer named Cole Fern. The reason they were there was that apparently a guildmaster from their guild had disappeared 2 years ago, and they had gone looking for him. But in the end, they got lost in the forest because communication was lost, and the forest had basically turned into a labyrinth. Because of that, they were already thinking about going back, since their guildmaster was strong and would probably manage on his own until reinforcements from the church arrived. The problem was that he had already been missing for 2 years, and there were also rumors in the streets that their guild had drawn the church's suspicion. Coincidentally, the guildmaster had only gone there after accepting a mission personally assigned by the Pope. The name of the master of this guild, called No Styles, was Gon, and for anyone wondering, the guild's name came from its motto: no deception, no abuse, no malice. Because the No Styles Guild didn't discriminate by profession, level, or race, they became famous for their generosity and unity, rising quickly to become one of the 8 great guilds. The problem was that because of this rapid growth, some rumors began spreading within the church. Because of that, the guild master declared that he would go to the swamp forest on a mission. However, shortly after that, there was no more news about him. And of course, since the guild had been without a master for 2 years, it quickly started losing more and more members, and gradually lost its former glory. Given that situation, Carter formed that group to try to find the master and restore the glory of the No Styles Guild once again. At that point, Naya started saying that if it weren't for the guildmaster, she probably would have never become an adventurer. But Fern quickly interrupted her, saying that she had a beast tamer class, so she could easily find another guild if she wanted, which obviously made Naya a bit upset. Meanwhile, our slime was trying to listen to the conversation, because gathering information about the human world was very important. To hear better, he tried to get a little closer. However, Fern quickly identified a monster and attacked with ice spikes. Obviously, it wasn't the slime's main body, but it was still connected to him. In fact, the horned boar being controlled by Nia instantly ate the piece that was in front of it, causing our slime to take damage and be pulled toward it. At that moment, it looked like game over for our slime, if it hadn't been for Naya stopping the horned boar. According to her, they couldn't discriminate against small defenseless monsters like that one. Seeing the slime up close, Naya thought he was cute, and even wanted to make a contract with him, which our protagonist obviously wanted to accept. However, the negotiation didn't go very well, because Carter showed up and told Nia not to pick up random trash, since they needed to rest to leave the next day. Naturally, our slime got angry. To show that he was different, he stretched his body and formed something like a kanji, trying to prove that he was an intelligent life form. The group was surprised, but they couldn't understand anything that was written there. In the end, our slime gave up and left, because it would look strange if he kept insisting. Returning to his hiding place, the slime reflected that he didn't want to encounter that terrifying owl again, and putting that aside, he activated the command core ability, the one he gained after killing the queen bee. He used it to find the other parts of his body, and it worked like a radar. Following the signal, he found the first piece of his body. It was gigantic, so he had to absorb it little by little, because his level was far too low. After a while, however, he couldn't find the second piece, because the signal was too weak. Soon he discovered the reason. A slug was eating the slime. Of course, he killed that slug and got very emotional, saying that he would finally save his son. However, the story had a sad ending, because out of absolutely nowhere, a frog appeared and swallowed the slime's son. Naturally, he was furious and declared that he would make the frog pay in blood for killing his son, so he fired an acid shot along with a stone. But it didn't do much, because the frog stopped the attack with its tongue. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, he jumped into the lake. Even so, the slime didn't give up. He climbed a tree and began attacking from above. The problem was that the frog hid inside the lake. However, it didn't stay down there for long. Frogs are amphibians, so it had to come up to breathe. Taking advantage of that moment, the slime landed a precise attack on the frog's left eye. Of course, taking advantage of the opportunity, the slime climbed to the top of the tree and started shooting from there. This time without stones because his inventory had run out. That didn't work very well either, because the frog swallowed the slime's acid shots. That was a surprise, and the slime was caught off guard and received a tongue attack. Not only that, he also started being swallowed by the frog. Even so, he didn't give up. He held onto the tree with all his strength, broke off a branch, used it like a spear, and pierced the inside of the frog's mouth, managing to kill it. The disappointing part was that the body fell into the lake, meaning the slime wouldn't be able to decompose the frog. But the problems weren't over. Once again, out of nowhere, another predator appeared. It was another frog, but this time a sanctified frog, and I didn't even know frogs could become saints. Then the sanctified frog began shooting a red liquid from its eyes, and the slime started running away, Spider-Man style, sticking to the trees like webs. The problem was that the frog did the same thing, but using its tongue like a web. I didn't quite understand what that blood power was about, but our slime got hit by it and took a lot of damage. He didn't even have time to process what had happened before he was attacked again. To make matters worse, he was thrown toward the water. Taking advantage of that weakness, the frog tried to swallow our slime. Now he wasn't just taking damage from the water, but also from the acidic liquid inside the frog's mouth. In that situation, the slime tried to split his body to escape, but the frog swallowed him again. Since trying to escape wasn't working, the slime decided to blow everything up from the inside. To do that, he used the honey he had obtained from the beehive. With it, he grew indefinitely and burst the frog apart. The real problem was that he became way too gigantic. In fact, he kind of bugged his own body, because he had more HP than the maximum he should have. And due to his body size, he had enough cellular fluid to regulate osmotic pressure changes. Oh, and of course that mode wouldn't last very long. He was disappointed because he thought he would turn into a Megazord, invading cities and destroying everything. But since he couldn't waste time, he decided to act. He ran around the entire lake, trying to decompose all the fish there. However, they were escaping too quickly, so he decided to leave and go to solid ground. And there, my friends, he started devouring everything he saw in front of him. Well, not everything. He left some weasels alone because he said he wouldn't kill something cute, as if it were his last redemption for still having a human soul. During this walk, he came across a squirrel that shot fire, and that one he definitely did not forgive. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a frantic battle was taking place. A crocodile was fighting a walking tree, which was actually a tree being controlled by one of the slime's bodies. The fight was fairly quick. Every time the slime lost his tree body, he simply moved to another tree. With this new body, he trapped the crocodile and burst its eyes, using some strange type of pollen. Unable to see, the big lizard used thermal vision. As a final move, it struck the middle of the slime's body with a powerful tail swipe, defeating him. And after finishing that fight, the crocodile's destroyed eyes began to transform. And it also started turning into that same sanctified monster, just like the frog. But we didn't even get time to see the full transformation, because the slime's main body appeared, gigantic and decomposed, the crocodile without even looking. Of course, that was because the main body didn't have much time left in that giant form, so it was making the most of it. While he was clearing part of the forest, something strange started happening. It was as if the forest itself were alive, because wherever the slime passed and destroyed things, the forest seemed to grow back instantly afterward. And the craziest part was that an explosion of energy happened out of nowhere. When the slime tried to check it out using his giant body, his buff ran out and he returned to his original form, tiny again. Looking at his status, the slime noticed that he had reached level 49, and his title had changed from Weak Creature to Lord of Weak Creatures. In the end, he was still trash, just stronger. Anyway, when he checked his inventory, he realized it was full of junk. Because of that, he was even starting to feel sick, since the inventory was basically his own stomach. So he threw everything out, and afterward he felt much lighter. Right at that moment, he received a notification saying that when he reached level 60, he could choose between changing class or evolving. Naturally, he immediately started daydreaming, saying that soon he would become a Majin Slime, a variant between class change and evolution. That way he would be closer and closer to dominating the world. Seriously, what is this obsession with slimes wanting to conquer the world? Do all slimes have that? But interrupting his thoughts, he heard the sound of bees. And yes, they were mage bees, flying in a certain direction. Out of curiosity, our slime followed them. Not long after, he arrived at a place full of beehives, or rather, something like a community of interconnected hives. At that moment, however, a white flamingo appeared, eating all the bees' eggs. And yes, it was different from the first one the slime encountered, since this one was white, while the other was red. Going back to what was happening there, the bees obviously weren't going to let the flamingo eat their offspring, so they attacked with everything they had, swarming the flamingo until they formed a shell of bees around it. But in the end, that didn't do anything. Since numbers weren't enough, the mage bees joined together and launched a barrage of fire magic at the flamingo. Once again, it came out unharmed, or rather, it swallowed the magic from all the mage bees and turned red. Then that snake-like tail used thermal vision, found the queen inside the hive, and defeated her, causing the entire army to collapse. That showed that this flamingo had some kind of intelligence, but the battle didn't stop there. My people, part of the flamingo suddenly started freezing, and the ones responsible were the trio from earlier. The fight resumed with the flamingo breaking free from the ice and attacking. Carter managed to defend himself from the attack, but his lousy little shield was completely destroyed. And so, once again the flamingo attacked, this time using its snake-like tail. That was when Nia rushed in with her horned boar, saving Carter at the last second. The flamingo, already starting to get furious, released a high-level fire spell, which was actually the combination of all the bees' magic, but unleashed all at once. To defend against that attack, Fern had to use almost all of his mana to create an ice barrier. The problem was that the slime was nearby and almost died indirectly because of it. In the end, Fern managed to defend himself, while the slime just stood there watching with envy, wanting to learn magic. Though honestly, I'm not sure it's that advantageous. Right after that, Fern said he wouldn't be able to use high-level magic for a while, since he had just used one to protect them. That showed the magic was powerful, but it had limitations. And since the two men were out of combat, Nia had to find a way to hold the fight. While the flamingo was distracted by the horned boar, Carter activated 100% of his power, leaped into the air, and came down at incredible speed, striking right in the middle of the flamingo's head with an iron mace. Because of that, it seemed like the fight was over, and they started to relax. But that was a mistake. The snake tail attacked Carter's back, injecting venom into him. Fern quickly helped by knocking the tail away, and Carter tried to drink an antidote, but the venom caused petrification. Because of that, Carter's neck was already turning to stone, and the antidote couldn't go down. In the end, Carter became completely petrified. In that situation, both Fern and Nia had no choice but to run away, leaving both Carter's body and the monster behind. During their escape, while drinking a potion, Fern said they had made a mistake by not properly measuring the monster's strength. Now they knew it was at least Lord level. And speaking of the flamingo, it suddenly appeared right in front of them on the path. Nia panicked and asked what they were going to do. Fern tried attacking with ice magic, but it did nothing except irritate the monster. Because of that, it once again summoned that incredibly powerful fire spell. With nothing else left to do, Frieren told Nia to run and call the church, while he held the monster back so she could escape. He then used that ice barrier spell again, sealing himself together with the monster. While fleeing desperately, Nia spotted the same owl she had earlier, which relieved her because it meant she could find her way back faster. The problem was that the owl was no longer obeying her commands. Unfortunately, it had been sanctified by that strange power. Meanwhile, in a sealed place, we see Gon, the missing guildmaster. Sadly, he wasn't going to last much longer. He had fought so much that the system was now demanding payment from him, since he had used every possible method to obtain power through it. Then, another gigantic monster appeared, and this one was no ordinary creature. It was the king of the swamp forest, Kedoilawa. He questioned Gon, asking if that was the system responsible for making his guild grow so quickly. He asked that because Gon had been trapped there for 2 years, while the monsters ran experiments on the system to see what it was capable of, and since Gon had helped them, the Forest King asked if he wanted to join them in their great plan of dimensional ascension. Of course, Gon refused. Because of that, the Forest King tried to kill him. It almost worked, but Gon pulled something out of his inventory. It was holy water. He could have used it from the beginning, but he didn't, because he wanted to face the true enemy behind everything. However, since his powers were almost gone, he decided to use it now. And honestly, I don't even know whether to call him stupid or just plain dumb. Another reason he used the holy water only now was because the Forest King had an immortal body. Since holy water attacks the soul, it was theoretically the best weapon he had. But even so, the Forest King didn't die and began regenerating. When his body returned to normal, he entered that same sanctified mode, and Gon explained that it was the power of adaptation. That ability actually came from the finger of the Dragon Emperor, the same one the slime had found earlier. Because of that Dragon Emperor's finger, the Forest King gained a skill called Inviolable, which granted adaptive power. And it turns out that the one who cut off that finger was none other than Gon himself. Back then, he had also used holy water coating his sword with it to manage to cut the dragon. But now that he had used up all his holy water, and hadn't used it before the Forest King gained the adaptation ability, it seemed like a game over for Gon. Soon, countless hands emerged from the ground and grabbed him. Gon managed to escape from that pit, but the Forest King had already prepared another attack, and this one was absurdly powerful. Gon tried to face it head-on, but he already had the fatigue status, so it was obvious he would lose. To make things worse, his weapon ended up breaking. With Gon lying on the ground, bleeding and injured, the Forest King began celebrating his victory, since it was clear that Gon was regretting not having used all his abilities earlier. But putting an end to all that drama, the Forest King delivered the final blow using the Imperial Dragon's finger he had absorbed. However, Gon refused to give up, and used a scroll covered with strange writing. The Forest King immediately recognized it as a demon summoning scroll. Apparently, it was extremely dangerous because the Forest King started begging for mercy, and even called upon the Pope for help. But the summoned demon crushed the Forest King as if he were nothing. After that, the demon approached Gon and commented that it had been a long time since they last met, the last time being when they fought each other. The demon was so happy to see him again that it even offered its own power to Gon, so he could destroy those evil monsters. Naturally, Gon refused, since it was obvious that it was some kind of trap. Since the job was done, he sent the demon away. In that brief moment of peace, he checked his system window and noticed that he was constantly losing HP, and his mana had already run out. And here comes the twist. Gon was the one who summoned our protagonist. In fact, he tried to connect his system to the slime's system, but of course he didn't know he had summoned a slime. The system replied that the connection wasn't possible because their systems were not linked. Meanwhile, the slime was trying to eat the rest of Carter's body, which had turned to stone. But since it was literally stone, he couldn't eat it. Not wanting to leave empty-handed, he simply took Carter's weapon with him. Following the escape route of the other two, the slime reached the gigantic wall of ice. Being cautious, he sent a piece of his body to check what was happening on the other side. And yes, Frieren was already dead, and the flamingo was extremely furious and very hungry. Seeing that, the slime quickly ran away, because he didn't want to be the next item on the menu. Since there was only one body left in the flamingo's mouth, he went after Nia to see if she was still alive. And technically she was, but who knows for how long. Her owl suddenly started attacking her fiercely, using a skill that transformed its beak into a scythe. It stretched its neck and began spinning wildly in every direction. It looked like the end for Nia. She had lost control of her owl, and even her horned boar was trapped between the tree trunks. Just as the owl was about to deliver the final attack, Nia, out of pure desperation, used mind control, allowing her to enter the owl's mental world. And inside, everything seemed normal, at least until she saw a very beautiful angel asking her to come closer. The strange thing was that the other side of the angel was actually a demon. Faced with that bizarre sight, she returned to the real world. and the owl did too. The problem was that she came back right as an attack hit her square in the face. The one who had done it was our slime, using the mace he had taken from Carter as a weapon. He was able to use it because his pulse ability was at the maximum level, and he was already level 49. The way he used the mace was basically like those crane-like weapons with a spiked ball at the end. Okay, that description sounded a little weird. Anyway, using that mace, the slime managed to save Nia's horned boar. And speaking of Nia, in the middle of that desperate situation, she ended up mistaking the slime for Carter, since he was using Carter's weapon. But the fight wasn't over. The owl returned in a fury, and in response, the slime spread his body across the battlefield, splitting himself into multiple parts to confuse it. When the owl attacked the wrong body, he counterattacked, but ended up hitting the poor thing right in the crotch. Taking advantage of that moment, the horned boar also attacked, launching the owl away. Then the slime finished it with a spinning mace strike, increasing the weapon's penetration power. After the battle ended, Nia calmed down a bit and recognized the slime. She asked if he had followed her there, because if he had, it might mean they had a strong affinity. Because of that, she offered him a master-servant contract. But as soon as the ritual began, the slime system warned him that if he accepted the contract, his system would be lost forever. And believe it or not, the slime actually started reconsidering. In fact, he started daydreaming again, thinking that if he accepted, he wouldn't be alone anymore. They would constantly compete together. Maybe he could even fuse with her and turn into armor for her. Or maybe he would evolve into something amazing, defeat the Demon King alongside her, and end up marrying her and living happily ever after. Yeah, his imagination really went way too far. But just as he was about to accept the contract, his nice little fantasy ended in a very tragic way, because Nia literally lost her head. The one responsible was the owl, or rather, the person inside the owl. Furious, the horned boar tried to attack the owl, but it didn't work very well. A de-evolution spell was cast on it, which for some reason turned the boar into something like a lizard or tadpole. Then, from inside the owl, a human head appeared. It was the Blue Hat Guildmaster, named Merlin. He was also one of the 7 holy knights of the church. He had managed to reach that place because the Forest King had died, which opened the prison that had been holding Gon. Merlin had come to eliminate Gon before he could recover his powers. Using the owl's body, Merlin flew away, while the slime watched everything in shock and trauma. He even wondered whether the flamingo from earlier had also been controlled by someone. But when he looked to the side and saw his supposed master dead, even though the contract had never been completed, the slime became furious and swore he would avenge her, even if he wasn't strong enough yet. Meanwhile, back on Gon's side, the system notified him that the mana loan he had taken had already been deducted from his maximum life. Even so, he kept trying to locate the other transmigrator who used the system, but he still couldn't find him. That was a problem, because he didn't have much time left. And speaking of the other user, the slime himself, he suddenly appeared on top of a tree behind Gon, thinking he was one of the supporters who had killed his master. So he launched a surprise attack right at the middle of Gon's head using Carter's weapon. Of course, poor Gon couldn't do anything, and fell to the ground, because he was already badly injured. Looking closer, the slime realized he had attacked the wrong person. After all, it was dark. However, Gon stood up furious. The slime was holding Carter's weapon, and still had traces of mana from Fern and Nia on him, which made everything look suspicious. Luckily, at that exact moment, the slime system finally connected with Gon's system, preventing a huge misunderstanding. After that, Gon began explaining everything. To fight against the church, he had activated his noble phantasm. Yeah, basically like the concept from the Fate anime. He used a skill called Coordinated Hope, which allowed him to summon the slime into that world. The slime understood the part about being summoned, but he still didn't get how he was supposed to help Gon when he hadn't even managed to protect Nia. Gon explained that in the beginning he had also been lost, just like the slime, not knowing anything about what was happening. But by following the system's missions, he gradually became stronger. The problem was obvious. The slime was literally a slime, not a human like Gon. How was he supposed to become strong? And that's when the plot twist came. Gon wasn't human either. He belonged to a race that hated humans, the goblins. Hearing that, the slime immediately started imagining that the reason Gon wore that armor all the time was probably because he was very ugly. But in reality, it was the opposite. He was too handsome, to the point that his beauty had become a problem. That made the slime angry, since their starting points were completely different. And just so you know, no one in the guild had ever discovered that Gain was actually a goblin. Anyway, they needed to hurry before the church caught up with them. The hurry Gon was talking about meant synchronizing their systems, which would allow the slime to receive all of Gon's abilities, which was extremely overpowered. While the synchronization was happening, Gon explained why he had accepted the mission to go into that forest in the first place. In reality, he wanted to uncover the truth about that world, but he ended up falling into a trap and had to use every trump card he had against the church. Of course, the church was also forced to use all of their own cards in response. And Little Slime couldn't understand anything, because things were happening way too fast. What did the church have to do with it? The Pope? Gon quickly explained that the church in that world wanted to sacrifice all living beings in order to open a portal to a higher dimension. Of course, Little Slime asked how they were planning to do that. For some reason, out of nowhere, Gon started telling the story of how he ended up there. He was born in an abandoned mine, where he started at the lowest rank among the goblins, and was constantly starving. Then when he turned 5 years old, he defeated all the goblins inside the mine. That was when the system awakened, and his soul recognized that he was a transmigrator, and that in his previous life he had been a human. Because of that, he tried to save the human women who were being held captive for reproduction, and tried to take them somewhere else. The problem was that they had suffered so much that they had all become addicted to the night game. Fortunately, according to Gon, he had a racial skill called dual cultivation. Hearing this, Little Slime immediately asked if his ability had a literal effect, just like Little Slime's own ability, which is decomposition. Gon agreed, saying that his ability was very exhausting, but whenever he used it with other adventurers, he would increase both his level and his profession by 1. After using his racial ability over and over again, he finally built a solid foundation for his future powers. Of course, Little Slime got annoyed because it sounded more like Gon was showing off than actually telling a story. The problem was that this beautiful story was interrupted by Merlin, who suddenly appeared using his magic, cutting through everything and everyone. Right after that, he felt disappointed for having killed Gon too early, but obviously, Gon didn't die that quickly. However, if things kept going like this, he definitely would, because the system was warning him that he had already reached his absolute limit. So Gon told the system to shut up. Seeing this, Merlin asked if by any chance, if he entered Gon's body, he could obtain that system for himself as well. While the two of them were talking back and forth, Little Slime launched an attack of acid mixed with stones, which obviously wasn't going to work. In fact, if the goal was to irritate the opponent, it worked perfectly. However, because of that brief moment of Merlin's distraction, Gon took the opportunity to attack. Unfortunately, Merlin was prepared and trapped Gon inside a cube of fire, but that didn't completely stop him. He broke the fire cube, grabbed Merlin's head, and said that if he was going to die to some bastard from the church, he would at least take one of them down with him. The system said he only had 1 HP left, and his skill Last Stand was still active. It lasted 1 minute, and during that time, regardless of any damage received, his HP would remain at 1, and Merlin orders Gon to release him immediately, asking if she knew the price of using that magic. The system then displays the effect of the skill. The user's HP would be reset to 0, and when that happened, the host would die. But Gon says that it didn't matter to her. Right after that, she activates Final Pact, and Gon feels very sorry about it, since they had just met and now she had to say goodbye, but there was no other way, as it was her last resort. If they didn't destroy Merlin, none of them would survive. She then entrusts the mission of saving the world to the slime, and tells him to never trust the church. The slime, crying, begs her not to do it. He says he was still waiting for her to carry him, and if someone as powerful as her couldn't defeat Merlin, how could she expect a pile of mud like him to win? But Gon tells him to believe in himself. Maybe the reason he had been summoned to this world was to serve as the means to bring her here. Then a great light shines everywhere, and soon after it disappears, leaving only a few traces behind. Merlin then appears, cursing Gon for what she had done. He says the mission had become a total failure. 5 of the candles of life, that were supposed to connect to the chaotic universe and prepare for ascension, had been extinguished all at once. Everything would have gone according to plan if it weren't for the slime. But the slime immediately attacks Merlin, saying he was just talking nonsense. He declares that he will inherit Gon's will, and together with the resentment he holds toward that girl from before, he will settle the score with him. He also reveals that he had left a clone behind as an escape route, in case something happened, allowing him to transfer his consciousness to it. Meanwhile, Merlin was trying to wipe the slime off his face, wondering if he was some kind of monster left behind by Gon. He quickly charges toward him, saying that he would make him feel his wrath in place of that bastard Gon. He casts abyss magic atavistic lightning, but nothing happens to the slime, leaving even him confused. Merlin is also confused, unable to understand why the spell had no effect. He wonders if it's because his soul had suffered severe damage, and his magical power had been reduced. Even so, he charges forward again, refusing to accept that the strongest mage in the kingdom could lose to a weak monster like him. The slime thinks that Merlin was almost killed by Gon, so he didn't know about his trick yet. He plans to use that gap in information to catch him by surprise. But suddenly, another monster intercepts the attack and strikes Merlin, sending him crashing straight into a rock. Merlin becomes furious again, since he can't seem to do anything. He declares that when he returns, he will reduce this filthy swamp to ruins. But suddenly, the monster that attacked him casts a fire spell and hits him directly. Even the slime is surprised, and he simply watches as the monster then devours Merlin. Soon after, a strong glow appears around the creature, and the slime wonders if that was an evolution. The monster had grown even larger, and some white parts had appeared on its body, making it look much stronger. But instead of attacking the slime, the monster simply flew away into the distance. Shortly afterward, the system screen appeared. Skill transfer was at 37%, and communication had been interrupted, preventing the acquisition of super magic, 4-dimensional enhancement, elemental resistance, martial arts talent, advanced mystic arts, and super Hihuan. However, the system showed that he had successfully obtained forging, large map encyclopedia, cooking skill, and medical knowledge. The slime said he realized it might have been better to remain just a small idle slime. Even though he had gained so much, he didn't feel happy. Still, he picked up the armor lying on the ground and told himself he couldn't get discouraged. He needed to recover and continue Gon's legacy. Otherwise, when the Vatican truly sacrificed the lives of everyone in this world, no one would be spared. He thought that even though he didn't have a body, he might still be able to control the armor. He began trying to walk but said it was difficult. If he focused too much on the right side, he couldn't move the left. He also couldn't control the lower part of the body, and eventually he just fell over. In the end, he left the armor and said he would keep it for now. It would be better to hide since he didn't know if the Vatican might send someone. He swallowed the entire armor into his stomach and decided to quickly return to his tree. He said that so many things had happened in just one night that he felt overwhelmed. He decided to organize all the information he had obtained. The system was loading the data, and once it reached 100%, several locations in the world appeared. Valfenda Mountain, the Polar Ice Mantles, the Wasteland Mine, the Royal Capital, and the Swamp Forest. The slime was surprised that this world had so many places. He was currently in the Swamp Forest. The system also explained that the Royal Capital had installed several teleportation points in different locations, allowing people to travel quickly. The portals were managed by the church, and adventurers could request access to them through the church in order to travel in search of adventures. However, half of the resources obtained by adventurers had to be handed over to the papacy as a customs tax. He wondered if entering a portal might allow him to go directly to the capital. He felt relieved that the path was clear, but before leaving, he needed to become even stronger. Right now, the only thing he had that could be considered an advantage was a damaged set of high-level equipment, and that girl's body. He wondered if he should just let her go, since no matter how much he preserved it, it might be better to simply let it rot slowly. Then he remembered her again. He said that from now on, even if he was the only one left, he alone would destroy the evil church. The system then showed that he had leveled up from 49 to 50, gained 0.8 skill enhancement points, and obtained the skill Domination. He then combined the skills Domination Technique and Central Command, resulting in the skill Parasitic Domination 4. As dawn arrived, the scene shifted to a frog. The frog used its danger sensibility and managed to dodge the slime's attack that almost hit it directly. However, it didn't help, because the slime attacked from multiple angles at the same time, and the frog soon died. The slime apologized, but said he had to use the frog's body to test his ability. The system then displayed the description of the skill Parasitism, which allowed him to invade the target's body by inserting his own biological neural will, covering and replacing the original consciousness. Meanwhile, Domination would turn the target into a puppet corpse. The slime said that after accessing Gon's system knowledge encyclopedia, the information in his own system had become much more detailed, making the abilities easier to understand. Shortly afterward, he vomited something into the dead frog's mouth and activated his parasite ability inside it, causing the frog to begin moving. The system reported that the skill had worked, but he had reached the limit of wandering corpses he could control. Once he leveled up the skill, he would be able to control more. The slime explained that once the parasite infected the corpse, it would move on its own. The next step was Domination. He concentrated to transfer his consciousness into the corpse, and soon he was able to open his eyes using the frog's body. He was surprised that the bacterium's consciousness had actually been transferred into the corpse, and the system showed it to him. The body had 89% durability, and its abilities were Charged Strike and Tongue Strike. The slime thought about the durability, since it was a corpse and didn't have HP. While observing the surroundings, he could see everything through the frog's vision, and he wondered if that was how a swamp frog saw the world. Looking at his own hands, he said that the muscles, nerves, and even muscle memory had been inherited, giving him the feeling that it was his own body without needing any readjustment. The frog looked at his original body, and he wondered if when his consciousness entered the original body, it would enter automatic mode. That seemed dangerous to him. In real combat, he would need to master concealment, but soon he changed his mind, deciding to leave that aside for now and simply test the new body. He became excited. The frog noticed an insect flying and quickly used its tongue, hitting it perfectly. He found it interesting and decided to try again. He ran off searching for other insects or smaller creatures until he found a snail and moved toward it. But suddenly he was disconnected from the body without realizing it. Seeing that, he realized the maximum distance was 30 meters, meaning he couldn't move too far away from the host body. But the frog quickly stood up again, surprising the slime, and started jumping all over the place. At that moment, he realized the body had entered automatic domination mode. The main body worked like a signal transmission station. When actively controlling it, if the distance from the main body became too large, the signal would be lost due to his weakness. However, when the parasite puppet got close to the main body, it would switch to automatic mode and act according to the instincts of its previous life. But when he saw the frog fail all its attempts to attack the snail, he realized the automatic mode wasn't very intelligent. He decided to stop the test and used storage on the frog. Then he reflected that if he defeated that bird from earlier, he could also parasitize its corpse. If he could parasitize high-level monsters, things would become much easier. He could gather a powerful parasite army to fight the evil papacy. So he decided to keep searching for a suitable target. While exploring the swamp, someone suddenly attacked him, causing him to lose some HP. He wondered who would dare ambush him. As he regenerated, he said the timing was actually perfect, since it saved him the trouble of going after the attacker himself. The attacker turned out to be a pufferfish with a very suspicious-looking mouth. Furious, the slime wondered if everyone, human or monster, really thought they could trick him. He said he would show the true power of a level 50 low-tier monster lord. Meanwhile, the pufferfish was already filling its mouth with water to shoot again. The slime managed to dodge all the attacks and retaliated by throwing a rock at it, causing a huge impact. He asked if it really thought it could run away after trying to attack him. He quickly transformed into a net and started capturing fish underwater. The system reported that he gained several experience points by catching the fish. Once he obtained a pufferfish corpse, its system window appeared. 99% durability, with the abilities Water Gun, Steel Tooth Cut, and Inflate. Without wasting time, he immediately attacked a crab. The crab struggled, but the slime said it wouldn't be easy to shake him off. He began entering inside the shell and quickly parasitized and dominated the monster, gaining another corpse for his collection. Its durability was 99%, and its abilities were Water Gun, Foam, and Claws. The scene quickly shifted to bees in combat, using swarm summoning. The slime advanced using the frog to counterattack, striking all the bees at once and even spinning its tongue around to grab even more of them. The slime started gaining a lot of XP, but as he began swallowing them, he noticed the bees preparing a fireball toward him. He quickly switched his consciousness to another monster and began controlling the crab. The crab and the bees launched attacks simultaneously from both sides, but the system reported that the crab's body water had been depleted, meaning it could no longer use Water Gun. As soon as the crab fell, the bees attacked even more intensely, causing a huge explosion in the swamp, right where the frog and the crab had been. The bees thought it was over, but suddenly one of them was hit by a surprise attack and died instantly. The slime was pleased that the surprise attack using the pufferfish had worked. The bees tried to attack him again, but he switched consciousness once more and launched himself directly into the hive where they were. The bees used a triple wax barrier to defend themselves, but the slime easily broke through it. He thought he had only been testing his teamwork, and then used a plasma cannon. He began rooting through the hive from the outside to the inside until he found the queen bee, and immediately parasitized her. While parasitizing the queen, he thought that if everything went well, this would become his first army. While he controlled the queen bee, the queen indirectly controlled the other bees. The queen had 99% durability, and her ability was hive mind. He began using the skill, ordering the bees to rise, but he became confused when nothing happened. Then he realized that if the queen died, the entire colony would perish. Because of that, he concluded that using a parasitized queen to control the hive wasn't a viable method, so he decided to replace her with a more useful bee. He selected a level 1 mage bee, whose abilities were magic gathering and levitation. Shortly afterward, back at the tree, the slime gathered his entire squad of corpses. He named the frog Frog G. The crab he named Kanisuke, since it was another crab, but had larger claws. The pufferfish he simply called Piggy. Then he wondered where the master bee was, since he had clearly just parasitized it. But when he looked at the frog, he realized where the bee was, inside the frog's mouth. The slime immediately punched the frog hard in the face. The first rule was not to eat a team member. The bee's durability had dropped to 70%, and the slime tried to comfort her, saying that everything was fine. Anyway, the slime said that the structure was quite complete. Now, the crab was the tank, the pufferfish was the shooter, even holding a cigarette in its mouth. The bee was the mage, and the frog was the assassin of the group. The slime himself was the commander-in-chief. the strongest assistant. All of them were prepared for the battle against that bird. The giant monster tried to strike the bee master, and the slime ordered the crab to use its shell defense. When the attack landed, the crab managed to defend itself, but its shell was worn down and its health dropped significantly. Still, the slime told it not to worry because he had a solution, and he began healing the crab. The slime then said it was the mage and the shooter's chance, telling them to attack with all their strength. The two launched a joint attack against the monster, dealing considerable damage. The slime said the monster had very thick fur, and the bee and the pufferfish could only hold it back for a short time, so he ordered the frog to attack. The frog used the art of assassination, striking the monster in the eye and weakening it. The slime said that now was not the time for flattery, and ordered everyone to attack at the same time. Then all of his subordinates charged directly at the monster, and in his imagination, the monster had already been defeated. Returning to the present, he said that now was no time to delay any longer, and the real practice would begin. The scene shifted to outside the swamp, where a level 9 jumping rat was quickly killed by a level 21 stone cat. But the cat didn't last long either, since an insect drained all of its blood, a level 35 swamp mosquito. When the mosquito flew away toward the water to lay its eggs for the fish, it was electrocuted by another creature that killed it instantly, a level 44 electric catfish. The slime was surprised, saying that after that snake bird, he was seeing something like this again. The catfish soon evolved into a level 52 thunder catfish, leaving flashes of lightning wherever it passed. The slime found all of this incredible. It seemed that monsters were evolving very frequently now. He decided to check the world's background information, and looked through the regional records. The ecological classification of the area was level S, and it was one of the regions with the greatest variety of monsters. A large number of high-level monsters had once lived there, and evolution was a common phenomenon. The classifications ranged from weak creatures to medium-sized creatures, advanced creatures, and even king-level creatures. The target of the battle had been the regional king Catuella, a monster that mobilized all high-level monsters and the vast majority of mid-level monsters in the area to besiege the target. Gone. The result was that the monsters were completely annihilated, and the ecosystem suffered massive damage. Since the battle had ended, the ecosystem had entered a recovery phase. It was explained that the land would continuously accumulate magical energy, providing a power source for ecological restoration. The ecosystem was gradually being rebuilt, and the monsters had begun their evolutionary process. The system reported that the surviving mid-level monsters had become the greatest beneficiaries of this magical enrichment, something related to ecological survival bias. In an environment without competition, they would complete the initial accumulation of resources and use it as an opportunity to gain priority access to evolution. One of them was a level 89 feathered serpent dragon, and another was the level 52 thunder catfish that the slime had just seen. The system said that luck could also allow low-level monsters to rise again, and the outcome would be difficult to predict. The only certainty was that the food chain of this land was about to undergo a complete reorganization. All monsters had already stepped onto that staircase, all striving to ascend and compete for the title of the true new king. The slime was surprised that the encyclopedia was now complete. He realized that the database Gon had given him was extremely useful. He wondered whether his puppet monsters could actually evolve, and noted that the electricity-generating fish was only one level below him. He also wondered why the catfish seemed stronger than him. Once again, the system explained that level was not an absolute measure of strength, since many other factors influenced it, such as species, racial traits, and abilities, or magic acquired later. Even a level 100 rat could easily become a snack for a dragon hatchling. The slime noticed that the thunder catfish was fighting now, and wanted to check it out. Watching the battle up close, he saw that it was between a crocodile and the thunder catfish. The crocodile was level 60, and it easily obliterated the catfish with its teeth. However, by the end of the fight, neither of them survived. The catfish had been split in half, and the crocodile had been burned. The slime said parasitizing them would not be an option, but when he went down, he was quickly electrocuted, losing many HP points. He even commented that he had to use 115 honey potions to heal himself. When he tried to ingest the catfish, the system informed him that he was suffering from nutritional overload. He had 50,000 HP worth of energy inside him, while he could only withstand 4,000 HP, and the duration would only be 1 hour. The system activated Decompose, allowing him to gain many experience points by ingesting items, even granting him a lightning-resistant skill. But in any case, he wanted to hurry up and finish everything quickly. Shortly afterwards, still in the swamp, he rolled around demolishing trees. He said crossing the paths like that was very fun, and his experience points were skyrocketing. Then he noticed something. On the other side, there was a mangrove forest, far more lush than where he was, and it likely had even stronger monsters. He decided to take a look, but as soon as he tried to cross the river, several level 19 piranhas began attacking him at the same time. He was losing about 40 HP per second, and the total HP loss had already exceeded 1000 points. He tried using his devouring ability to eat the piranhas and recover HP, but he realized he gained 80 HP while losing 100, which was not a good trade. On top of that, his movements in the water were far more restricted, and they were consuming more blood than he could replenish. The system explained that monsters are more dangerous when they live in groups, like the difference between a single wasp and an entire hive. Overfeeding would also cause him to grow to an enormous size, making him an easy target for other monsters. While being devoured, the slime did not want to listen to the system's explanation. He quickly ejected himself from the main body, losing 20,000 HP in the process. He wondered if he could replenish the consumed energy by eating honey again. The system said yes, but the time would not be recalculated, and the remaining duration was only 20 minutes. Soon after, he went back to rolling through the swamp. He thought the terrain no longer changed much, but the plants continued growing extremely fast, and he was impressed by the magic in those lands. He thought that if you looked at it from another perspective, taking down the papacy might not be that difficult. After all, although fungi do not possess dragon breath, or the sharp teeth and claws of magical beasts, their most powerful trait is their ability to stack endlessly. For him, the only thing left was exterminating monsters, since he had infinite decomposition, absorption, and evolution. As long as he kept digesting and absorbing day and night, in about a month he could make the entire church feel what it was like to be besieged by a slime. However, the system told him not to do that. The slime asked why, and it explained that as his level increased, the experience gained from dismantling lower-level items decreased. 10 levels higher would give 60%, 20 levels 36%, 50 levels 7.7%, and 100 levels only 0.6%. The slime had already noticed this, since his experience points were increasing, but his level was not. In the end, his points had completely stopped rising. He asked if the system could simply explain the specific numerical values of experience directly. The system replied that it was not possible because it would require too much computational capacity. The current overload period had ended, and the conditions for the next initialization would increase 5-fold. Then the items inside the slime's body began to fall out. The slime felt that the system had indeed become smarter. Though he found it annoying, he simply told it to start quickly. Soon, all the items began to be expelled, from skeletons to entire monsters. The slime said that to improve, he needed to find stronger monsters now. When the sun was setting, he noticed the tide was going down. As he walked, he wondered what kinds of monsters he might encounter. He was actually bothered by the mud, since it was sticky,